Hello and welcome to Talking Marketing, an AMA Boston podcast where we chat with marketing professionals across various industries and try to get to the core of what makes their work impactful. I'm Ibrahim, your host and co-VP of content for the American Marketing Association's Boston chapter. Today I'm very excited to welcome today's guest.
Hold on, Alan. Let's switch things up a little bit.
All right, sure, let's do it.
Hello and welcome to Talking Marketing, an AMA Boston podcast where we chat with marketing professionals across various industries and try and get to the core of what makes their work impactful. I'm Victoria Franco, co-VP for content for the American Marketing Association Boston chapter, and today's host for Talking Marketing podcast. For our 50th episode, we will be flipping things around a bit. I'm very excited to welcome today's guest, Alan Ibrahim, co-VP of content for American Marketing Association Boston, and your typical host of Talking Marketing.
Yay! Thank you, Victoria. I'm so excited to be here.
Thanks for joining us. Before we dive in, can you go a little bit into the background of your career, how you got involved with AMAB, all that kind of thing?
Absolutely. So, the tale begins in 2012. I grew up in a Middle Eastern family background, and my parents were, very traditional immigrant family in some ways. And they really wanted me to get into a well-paying career. And so at the time, I had interest in high school in doing graphic design and, production design, things like that. And they were like, oh, I don't really know, is that like a money-making career? I wasn't sure. So they kind of nudged me into my other hobby, which was science and like medicine. So they said, well, you could do a doctor, but that's like really long and difficult. You can try being a dentist. It's like a little bit shorter. So I went to college in Boston at MCPHS University for pre-dental, and I had a good time. It was difficult though. It was a really weird, period of growth for me. Like everybody goes to college, and I graduated in 2016. Did not get into dental school, so my story is kind of one of failing upwards. And I did a post-bac at UMass Boston, which we'll talk about, and then I realized that I was jumping between a few jobs too, and I was like, do I want to do this dentistry thing? Like, am I really committed to keep trying? And I decided to make a pivot. I lost one of my jobs in 2019, and so I was unemployed for a bit, and then, long story short, got this temp job with the state, which was very stable and good, and then COVID happened, and I decided, as a lot of people do when they're bored and they're in COVID, what if I went to grad school? And so I went to UMass Boston then for my MBA, and completed my MBA. And in one of my courses, I met a professor, shout outs to Professor Coons, for introducing me to Bob Cargill, current president of AMA Boston. He said, oh, this is like where you want to get started if you want to, because it was an MBA in digital marketing. So I basically had reached out and been like, how do I get a job? It was like, start by volunteering and go from there. So that's how I got in with AMAB or AMAB if you're nasty.
That's awesome. Yeah, congratulations on getting your MBA. That's huge. We're both from UMass Boston, which is great. Love to see the Boston representation.
Of course.
So some of our listeners are younger, college students. We have a lot of collegiate chapters, typically in undergrad. Can you tell them more about getting their MBA? Was it worth it? Would you learn? What are some skills that you learn and use for it today?
It was definitely worth it. It was an interesting decision for me to make. So I've been podcasting since 2015.
Wow.
We'll talk to you about that, I think. I've been podcasting casually with my best friend Magellan since 2015. We were originally, we love TV, we're big pop culture nerds. And so I loved making podcasts, but I didn't know how to market them. I was like, I can make it, but I don't know how to make people listen to it, right? And eventually I was like, I should learn how to market myself, which is kind of how I picked that out of a hat. And then I had a lot of time during COVID to do my GRE. So I was able, the GRE I think is getting a lot less important now for certain graduate degrees. But at the time I could tell it was starting to fade. And I was like, if I just get in now with this GRE score, I'll be good. Because I didn't have a marketing undergrad. So I did the GRE, I crushed it, because again, I had so much time, and during COVID, they let you take it at home.
Oh, wow.
Which is wild, yeah. I think I might have told you that.
Yeah.
But you don't have to pretend to be surprised for the podcast. But I appreciated it very much. And so they were like, yeah, you just take it on. I took it on my laptop at home or something, and did great, got into school, and the first year or so of the MBA was completely remote, which I wasn't working remotely at the time, but that was kind of the experience of like, instead of being in the morning logging on, it was like, all right, 5 p.m., like I have 2.5 hours of lecture. And the remote part of my MBA was like pretty challenging. I have some sort of ADHD. I've never been diagnosed. I'm not like looking to be, but it's like hard for me to pay. That was one of the hardest things for me in undergrad, right? Was focusing for a long time. So lectures were difficult, but I really liked the group work. Like they put us in touch with a lot of other cool people. And, that's, I think, one of the biggest values in an MBA is, your ability to meet people and improve those social skills and networking skills. And then to like meet those people who will then maybe be your coworkers or your boss or your future like startup investor. So yeah, I think that was the best stuff out of the MBA. I think like if I were to give like advice to people trying to do one, the first like basic thing is to ask yourself why you want to do it. Like, do you want to do it because you have a job and you want to make X amount more money? In that case, you should really only do it if your job is paying for it. If you're like me and you're like, I just really want to do this and I'm passionate about it, and you can afford to do it, go do it anywhere. The degree doesn't, like the where you did it doesn't matter so much as what you learned from it, just like in college, in my opinion. So yeah, see if your work will pay for it. If they don't, find a place that you can do it within your budget and make sure you're utilizing it. Like go to your office hours, read your textbooks, meet people, go to the boring networking events and like volunteer with AMA, wink wink, and like do all the stuff that you think like nobody really does those things. Like you should totally do those MBA things.
Yeah, it's what helps you stand out, and I think that's what's cool about the AMA is it kind of branches that even further. So like you said, connecting and networking is a huge part of the MBA, and we keep doing that. Awesome. So as you know, we love having you as the Talking Marketing podcast, but like you just talked about a little bit, you've been doing a podcast with one of your friends for a couple of years. That's called Chats, a television podcast. Can you tell us what that's like and where we can listen to it?
Yeah, it's been a fun project. I think we're in year 9 of doing it now. Wow. It's wild to think about, but the way it started was, so my best friend Majan and I, like I said, we bonded over podcasts all the way back in like 7th grade. Like, awesome. Yeah, we were like at the lunch table, like, what's a podcast? Like, I used to play a lot of World of Warcraft, and we would listen to like World of Warcraft podcasts, and there was like this one shout out, it was called Extra Life Radio. This is very old, no longer around. I don't know. They still do stuff, but regardless, it was like a pop culture nerd show. So we knew what they were, and then he went to college in California, when we were going to college, and his mom was like, you guys should Skype like every week so that you stay in touch with each other, and which was like really sweet and helped us like keep this friendship. And so sometimes we wouldn't have stuff to talk about, and we'd be like, do you want to watch something? And I had taken an interest one summer in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and so I was like, hey, you want to watch the show with me, and like let's just talk about it. We didn't record that, we did that, and it's so wild, Victoria, to think about how it came about, where we were like, let's get on Skype, let's talk about this for an hour, let's like read the wiki and like do the summary and do the credits, and then just that's our conversation for the week. Like I'll talk to you next week. Eventually, after like finishing 7 seasons of Buffy and Angel, the spin-off show, we were like, should we be like putting this out? Like, is that doable? And I found like a host and like looked into the basics of how to do that, and that's how Chats came to be. We were like, we like watching TV and talking to each other. People like hearing us talk to each other because we have good chemistry. Like, I don't know a lot of podcasts where the hosts have known each other as long as Majan and I have. Yeah, he's like a brother to me, like 100%. And we do like this Patreon too. It's patreon.com/chatspod, CHATCPOD, and over there we do like non-TV stuff. So we'll talk about like, we'll play games online or do quizzes or trivia or tier lists, like silly stuff. And we have this really great community now of people who like respond and look forward to our discussions. And because we mostly cover TV and like cult classic TV, it's really fun to be like right now we just started covering Xena Warrior Princess, that show from the 90s. And it's very cool being like, oh, there's a Xena fandom like online and they don't know us. But now they're like, oh my God, there are these like guys who've never watched Xena before that are like watching it, and they whenever we do a new show, people join the fray, so to speak. So yeah, it's been so fun, and I'm really happy with where it's at.
I love that. Yeah, and we'll definitely all have to check it out. So can you just give us the link one more time?
Yeah, so the main show, it's called Chats, CHATZ, a television podcast. You can look that up on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. It's also, we have a website, chatspod.com, which we don't really maintain anymore, but that's like our landing page. Give it a listen. We have so many old seasons. I always feel weird when people are like, I'm going to dig into the first episode. And I'm like, I was a baby.
Please don't. Yeah.
Please
exactly.
don't. I'm so embarrassing. I got this idea from another podcast I listened to called Gender Reveal. They're so fun. And they did an episode 0 that they released years later, but put at the front of the feed to be like, hey, what you're about to listen to after this is like bad, crusty, dated, whatever. So, I'm not like embarrassed by any of it truly, but like I didn't know how to edit.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to use a microphone. Like, it's rough.
Yeah. It's cool to see how far you came though.
Totally.
Awesome. So podcasting, AMA, getting your MBA, working at the MBTA, you've got a lot going on. So what are some of your interests outside of these activities?
I try to keep a lot of hobbies. I used to it's funny, I used to write on my dating bios like I have too many hobbies, like as if that was an appealing thing to say. I've learned a lot about writing bios for myself, whether it's dating apps or like professionally, I change my LinkedIn bio like once a month now. I like a lot of stuff, you know. I love pop culture, obviously. I've been like getting back into video games lately, like tapping into the inner child. I know we'd share that. I like going out. I like going dancing. I like I'm trying to get back into reading in a big way.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I like anime. I like manga. I pick from a lot of things. I like cooking and baking. I will try. This is another I think it's an ADHD thing. I'll try a little bit of every single hobby.
Yeah.
There's like very few that I'm like deep into, but I'm like, I've gone hiking, I've gone dancing, I go to the beach, I go freaking running. Yeah, I go to the gym, I do all this stuff. And I'm like, jack of all trades, master of none. That's how I kind of think about it. So I like a lot of stuff. I'm trying to think of anything in particular that's like interesting, but
I'm always here to talk video games.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, our spring was filled with a lot of incredible AMA events. We actually have one tonight, coming up. But are there any fun events listeners can look forward to for the summer?
Yeah, I always recommend people look at the amaboston.org events calendar. That's maintained by Victoria here, the rock star herself. I always call her the rock star.
He is very encouraging, and I love it.
It's always updating. We have at least 2 events every month, I believe. We have a networking event and an educational event. I think that's what we call it. Always checking that calendar. I know we have the Think Inside the Box event tonight, which I hope you went to, and if you didn't, then you missed out. I'm sorry to hear that.
It was so fun.
It was so fun. We're thrilled to have been there. I'm trying to think what else I know we have coming up. Yeah. Because we have one more May event, right? We still have the networking May event.
The networking at the end of the month.
You can also look up AMA Boston on Eventbrite and find that. So that's a networking mingle that we're doing with a collabo with other networks. So get out there. If you're in the Boston area, then I hope that's why you're listening to the show. If you're not in the Boston area and you want to come on down, we have check out the events calendar. It's so cool. I like our networking events. I've been trying to make more of them. I've been slacking lately because of life, but every time I go, it's very fun. Our team brings a really good energy. Bob takes a big selfie. You get to meet him and post it on the socials. We're always up to some sort of trouble somewhere in the Boston area.
Awesome. So let's dive into a little bit more serious stuff. So the AMA Boston chapter, and even at a national level, is a very inclusive space that we're grateful to be a part of. So with Mental Health Month kind of wrapping up and then Pride Month following, what are some words of wisdom that you have for people about being their authentic selves when it comes to both their careers and even outside of their career?
It is super important, and I don't want to give people a pithy be yourself. Just it's hard to do that in this world. Finding your identity is complicated and is not linear. I find and unfind myself all the time.
Absolutely.
As of today, I currently identify as queer, as bisexual. So that has been really interesting. I figured that out about myself maybe 6 years ago, and navigating that in Boston, which, like you said, is a very inclusive place, and with AMA, I have felt very welcomed. And it's a complicated topic for me because I'm not out to everyone I know in my life, but I think living authentically, whether it's a label that you give yourself, queer or or otherwise, it's also about like your, being authentically yourself in terms of your personality.
Yeah.
Who do you love? Who do you care about? Where do you fit in a group of people? Like we're talking about our networking events, and sometimes I tell Brian Hurst, like our social media guy and one of my good friends, I'm like, I don't have it in me today. Like I don't have the social sauce to be like, hi, shaking hands and like giving out business cards. Sometimes I do, because it's all performance. Like, and that's not a bad thing. I'm not here to be like, we're all fake. It's just like you act differently for different people, right? We have our like professional self and our goofier selves. I try to bring my goofy self to everything when I can. It's just hard when you're doing a job interview, or you're trying to look, like I said, professional, and then you're like, this feels wrong. Like I think I tend to attract people who are weird. Like I love weirdos. I love people who are weird.
Is that why we became such good friends?
I think so. I'm almost positive.
I love it.
Yeah, like bring weirdos into your life, surround yourself with them, and then you'll find yourself saying, wow, I don't feel like I'm performing as much anymore, because it can really be tiring to like be on for too long, especially for like different types of people,
Yeah, find those friends that you feel comfortable around, and then make sure to take the time to recharge when you need to.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being here today and allowing me to take over your podcast. It's an honor to co-VP with you. You're constantly coming up with new ideas. You're helping successfully manage our large, amazing content team, and taking charge of this wonderful podcast and your other podcasts as well. So keep up the great work. Thank you for all you do. And do you have any last words of advice for our listeners?
Yeah, well, I wanted to pivot also and talk about other marketing stuff. Like people may just be like, who's this Alan guy? He doesn't even work in marketing. I think that marketing expresses itself in a lot of ways. Like you notice it in a lot of places. I remember when I got this degree or when I was doing it, my parents would be like, okay, but like what is marketing? Like is it billboards, like the classic thing? And I was like, well, not really. That's a branch of it called advertising, but like, and I have so many books that explain it, and yet I still, it's a vibe. To do marketing, it's a practice, not an art, or it's an art, not a practice rather. It's flexible, it's subtle. What I like doing and like what has worked with me for talking marketing, to be meta for a sec, is like talking to people, not just asking about jargon and buzzwords and things like that. Because I remember like one of my favorite episodes, Brian always asks me this, it's Prasanna Dugel. He was an awesome guest because he had a lot to say about like Google search and like how search was changing. And what started as like, what does the future of AI mean for Google search, turned into like, why do we look things up the internet, and like how has that changed? Because like you're around my age, and like looking something up when you were a kid felt like you had like infinite book of wisdom in front of you. And now as you get older and you learn how Google search works, and it's all about these priorities and ad buy, people like raising their search results, it's easy to get really cynical about it. And you're like, there's nothing useful. And like Google has definitely gotten more difficult to like find your basic info. But I think where I get optimistic is like the work that we do, the little, I nothing but respect for like my social media friends who work in social media and post those tweets that, get good or bad responses. Cause like that's at least a human working on that. I know, for example, I saw on Twitter recently, I forget what company it was, but they had an AI write a bunch of their like tweets for a little while, and it was like really bad. And I think it got some like blatant information wrong, and it was just like, man, and I'm probably better off like not calling out the company, but like you do something like that, and I'm sure like in deep marketing Twitter, somebody's like, this is a smart idea, and it's path forward. But I've been on Twitter since 2008. Like really freaking long time, and I've seen it go through so many iterations, whether it's X or whether it's when they increase the character limit. Back in my day, we posted 140 character tweets, and that was enough. And so like it's always changing, but I think, I don't know, if I'm being so super honest with you right now, honey nut Realios, if you will, I think the AI stuff is like, it's changing so fast. It's not going to look the way it does right now. I've seen plenty of cool uses for it, but it just can't replace humans. And that's what every guest I've talked to has said. But they're going to keep trying. They're going to keep trying. They're going to try to do our tweets and do our ad copy and our slide decks and stuff. Like you were talking earlier about taking notes because you were at a conference recently, and then feeding those into ChatGPT. And at least that's an example of like, you're not having it write your notes for you,
Yeah.
but you're having it like condense and summarize your notes.
Yeah, pick out the action items and.
Right, but like a person wrote
Yeah.
wrote those down and put them into a thing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think it's all of these tools are good to augment what we can do already, which is create thoughtful, engaging stuff for other people.
Mm-hmm.
That's like how I ended up doing this podcast. Is, you know, I mentioned how I got into AMA, but specifically with content, it was, and this is a throwback for the old listeners, I guess. I was working under Pat Cooper, who now has the wonderful Brands Over Brews podcast, and a bunch of other people. And I think Megan McGrath had just left. She was like one of the previous hosts. And Pat would like, I would get on Zoom calls with him during work, and he'd be like, I don't really know what I have for you to do right now. Like, you know, you and I deal with this sometimes, where we have all these wonderful volunteers, and it's like, we have projects, but they're not ready to start right now, so like, just cool your jets. And after several weeks of that, he ended up leaving for personal reasons and moving. I think that's the main reason he left. And I just kind of found myself like, I guess I'm the VP now. Like, I guess
taking on all
the responsibilities. Yeah. So I guess if I can finally answer your question now, like 10 minutes later, part of my advice is to like let yourself be super duper flexible, like be elastic, like surround yourself with weirdos. And when an opportunity presents itself, that's the world telling you to do it, to leap into it. Whether that's work or any part of your career or your love life or anything, sometimes it just kind of, you'll know when it presents itself to you. So with that, it was like, no one else is here. We could stop doing this forever, or I could just try it. And I tried it, and I was so lucky. My first guest, I never get to talk about this like on a podcast, Jen Faucon, who has been with AMA for a while and is now doing insanely cool stuff in her career, was my first guest, and such a gift to, because so I, you know, usually we do like the prep call before the podcast, little behind the scenes, and during the prep call, she was like, you should ask me this. And she'd be like, you should ask me this in this way.
Yeah.
And then I'll pivot to this. And I was like, oh my God.
Like the podcast mentor.
Exactly.
Basically what you did to me before
Exactly.
this podcast.
Yeah. I was like, and she was like, you know, be patient with it, and like, let me say this, and then, oh, maybe we'll pivot into this, because we had initially just wanted to talk about like Super Bowl ads.
Yeah.
And I learned so much in that episode about like her history in advertising and like what working for a big agency can do for you. And like, it unlocked something where I was like, so you just really need one person to be like, here's how to do it.
Yeah, I love
you
that.
know? And that's like been my big goal with, I think, with AMA, is we always talk about like mentoring the next generation of people, and you know, I won't be here forever, not like on this earth obviously, but like with AMA forever. I love to be here, and I'm here for now, but like when we are like looking for volunteers, I'm always like, if you want to try hosting, like I did for you, like sit in on a prep call, you know, you can sit on mute, or you can ask your own questions. You can sit in on a recording. I'll teach you how to edit. Like it is another thing where it's an art, not a science. Like you can do a basic edit, really, and AI can do an edit, but a good podcast edit, that's a person. Yeah. Once again, and it's not the hardest thing in the world to learn. I learned it on my own with like YouTube. So that's always what I'm trying to do with AMA, is like make the next generation of people who like doing this weird conversational hobby that I like, and make it easier and more accessible for them.
Yeah, and it's kind of like you mentioned earlier with your first podcast in your personal podcast and your first podcast now, to see where you've come from that. And maybe you didn't technically start with that undergrad in marketing, but you're definitely doing it now, and you're definitely a huge asset to AMA. So I look forward to kind of following you on your career and seeing where you're going, and being co-VPs with you of content forever.
Of course.
Forever.
Forever and ever.
Forever and ever.
It's funny, right? Because then people hear, you know, they hear me talk about like, I started in dentistry and I left, and they're like, oh, should I not even go into college then? Like, I remember, and I'm sorry I've told this story a lot of times off pod maybe, but I was in an Uber once coming to speak at Bob's at Suffolk University actually, and both my Uber driver and the student who was the other person in the car both wanted to get into marketing. The guy wanted to like start his music career, and the girl was into like fashion and food photography. Oh, that's awesome. And I was like, you guys are so cool. You have like the talent. Now just put it into a career.
Yeah,
like, just
exactly.
Get a job somewhere that does what you're good at doing. And you know, you can learn it in a lot of different ways. Whether that's a degree, like another like infamous or famous episode of Talking Marketing with Vladimir, where he was like, degrees are dead. Like degrees, I'm like, I was in the middle of my MBA when he said that. And I was like, and in some ways I do agree with him, right? Like the MBA is valuable if you put the work in for it.
Yeah.
If you do what a lot of us did in undergrad, and you're like, I'll go to class, I'll get the bare minimum, pass the class, and go home. Yeah, you're gonna finish your degree and be like, what did I even do that for? Because you have to do more than just coast by and finish. Because it's no longer about just like GPA or finishing. It's like you have to be a little proactive.
Yeah, you're almost in it because you want to be in it versus feeling like you have to because it's that undergrad degree.
And you do have to want it a little bit, or at least understand why it's important.
Yeah.
Because I know that same girl in the Uber was like, she's like, I don't know why I'm doing this. I'm doing it because I feel like I should be. And I was like, I don't want to tell you to quit, but like find your passion.
Yeah.
Because for me in college, it was like, I liked the area I was in, and I liked the people I was with. I didn't always like the material we were learning, but I was like, well, I have to pass this class to keep going to college. So if that's a reason for you to finish, then like, whatever gets you there.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Whatever gets you to where you're trying to be, whether it's pivoting and changing degrees. Like I know people who did like a degree pivot in their late 30s, in their 40s. Yeah, career pivots completely, and have had like success with that.
It's never too late. I mean, you have to be happy with your career, or else it's just gonna be miserable.
Yeah, I've even like I've had other like pre-meds who went to college with me who have also pivoted to marketing, pivoted to business because some of them sooner, some of them later are like, maybe this isn't for me. And like I think COVID definitely changed that for a lot of people too.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I don't actually have to do the thing I went to college for.
Yeah. But
if you're like listening to this and you're maybe in high school or you're in the middle of college, I would just say like, you got to try something. That's like my advice in general.
Yeah.
Try something. If it doesn't work, then let yourself pivot.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Side hustles too. Like anything
Absolutely.
You can do to maybe get that love for something a little bit more, even if it's not in your current career or college or whatever you're doing.
You'll find something to love in it eventually.
Yeah.
Even if it's not like the work. It's like I said, maybe it's the people, maybe it's the habit of it. Like some people like I think a lot of people, sorry I'm like going on all these tangents.
No, you're
some people, especially in their late 20s, will say like, I want to go back to grad school because I liked the feeling of studying and like having an exam to work towards, which seems funny, but like we don't get always those rigid goals in our adult life. We get like deadlines that seem imaginary and projects that are never ending, but like in your university studies, like at least you can start and finish. Yeah. So that's I think the appeal too of college right now, even though in the US it is like so expensive to go to college. Do you ever like meet somebody from Europe? You're a world traveler. Yeah. You meet someone from like Europe and they're like, I have three like grad degrees, and you're like, oh, you guys get paid to do it. Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah. And I think marketing in general, obviously school is helpful to learn it all, but marketing in general, it's data, it's like you said, it's creativity, it's all of these different things. So you might hate email marketing, but you love social media marketing. Or you might hate being an artist because you're not creative or whatever, and you're more into the data scientist. And it's like, there's so many things you can pivot just in marketing alone. So yeah, you might not like what you started in, but you can pivot within it. Marketing super duper easily. Like I started with digital, and when I took my first digital marketing class, and it was like, fix this website, I was like, this is what this is. If this is what this is, then I'd like to pay more to content, and then that's how I ended up here. So well said. Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate everything you do. And this was amazing. Thank you for letting me hack your podcast. Of course, I gladly hand the reins over anytime. If we want to flip the script again, I'll write some questions for you, maybe down the line. Absolutely. I hope people enjoyed this. It's been 50 episodes of fun conversations and education, and I haven't been here for all of them, but I've listened to almost all of them, and it's really cool to be a part of such a big project like Talking Marketing. So happy to be here. It's awesome to be a part of the AMA community, in a national sense and the Boston sense. I never would have met Alan if I wasn't. We have tons of great friends. We're going to trivia next week together. It's all about networking, but it's also about making that connection and meeting those weird people, like you said, and kind of just making your community around you, whether you're from a new city or you're from here. Just join us at an event or on our content team.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll include some notes at the end if how you want to get involved, but there's plenty of places to do it. We're always looking for more people, so if this seems fun to you, then reach out.
Yeah.
Don't be a stranger.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Yay!
All right.
Stop. Camera.
I'm like so stressed. This needs to save before I.
It's gonna delete right now.
Yeah. It's gonna be like not enough like data.
Yeah.
If you enjoyed this episode of Talking Marketing and you want to hear more of our conversations with marketing professionals, subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any other major podcast platform of choice. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube as AMA Boston. And most importantly, if you'd like to support the work we do here, please consider becoming an AMA Boston member by heading over to amaboston.org/become-a-member. AMABoston.org is also the #1 place to find all of our work, including the AMA Boston blog, events calendar, job board, and a whole suite of ways to volunteer with our team. We get to keep doing this thanks to the support of listeners like you. Thank you.